recorded for those of you who may want to review it a little bit later. We'll be sending that out to you. And welcome to Making It as a Coach. Delighted to have you here in this on July the 25th. So as you can see, we are at Coaching Out of the Box. We're just passionate about everybody learning coaching skills, and today is about supporting you in figuring out what is the right pathway for you, and hopefully providing you with some strategies and some values around what are going to be your next steps. And I am absolutely committed that this webinar will provide you with excellent value. And I just want to briefly say, for those who have not attended one of our webinars before, a tiny bit about who we are. We're committed to supporting, really, in the end, everyone learning coaching skills. We do it about 3 different ways. One is we develop coaching capacity in organizations. So organizations bring us in and we support their leaders and managers and directors and etc. in learning coaching skills that they can use. We also support individuals in learning how to coach, and for some, leading to certification, which we're going to talk about on this webinar as well. And then the other one is we license some coaches in our flagship program so that they then can go into organizations and support those organizations in developing the coaching capacity. So that's who we are. What I want to do now is I'm just going to launch a poll with 3 questions on it, and if you could answer the poll, that would be very helpful, and then we'll see the makeup of the class. And I'm just watching it take off here, so we'll give it a moment. Almost there. Well, I can see that, and I'm going to share this in just a second here. Let's give it another moment. Got a few more people that haven't had a chance to answer. Okay, I'm going to end the poll, and just hang on a second here. Just going to switch my slide again back to here. All right. So what I'm seeing here is very helpful for me to ensure that this is of value to everyone. So I've got basically practically every single person that's on this webinar has experience being coached, which is fantastic. We also have about 73%. Oh, I'll share the results too. Forgot to click on that. We have about 73% at this point who have had some coach training. Fantastic. And we have about 40% who are already credentialed. And this is going to help me as we go through what we're focusing on today. So thank you very much for being willing to answer that poll. So we'll just move forward to the next slide. And I'm going to just share a little bit about myself, because whenever I've delivered things or I have attended training programs or webinars or listen to speakers, I always think, well, what gives me or what gives them the right to be talking? And this is why I'm sharing this. I'm a long-term coach. I've been in coaching now just over 20 years. So I got in the Wild West days of coaching. Became very involved in supporting the growth of the profession, the emerging profession, and was very committed to wanting to create a lot of credibility about coaching because I believed so strongly in it and saw the value with the people that I worked with. And very quickly, what happened because of the growth, I became a coaching educator. So I've been a coaching educator with UT Dallas, University of Texas at Dallas. I did quite a bit of work with them. I was their first faculty, actually, for their executive coaching program. And also, I headed up a program in Canada for the executive coaching program in Canada for the Royal Roads University for 13 years. And during that time, I also have had my own coaching business, and I'll share a little bit more about that, and that will tie to some of the strategies that may support you. And I also, because I saw what was going on out there, I felt so strongly that everybody needs to learn this, and I founded Coaching Out of the Box, and that was with the desire to support making it as easy and cost-effective for people to learn these skills, whether they're going on to become credentialed coaches, whether they're in organizations. This is what my passion was and what I did. And so we created programs that are designed to do that, make it easy, cost-effective, and at the same time, we do live face-to-face as well as we leverage technology, and have for about over 8 years now. So we were in the early days of leveraging technology. And to date, as you can see, we've had over 16,000 people take our programs. So for today, this is our objectives, the need for coaching, just a little clarity around that. And I'm going to talk about coach credentialing, what's involved in that. Then we're going to get into some strategies. What is required for you to make it, for a coach to make it, a person to make it? And also, as I'm moving through that, the intertwined will be some success stories. In other words, what I've seen work, what's worked for me, what's worked for other people that I've worked with, etc. And what we'll also do, what I'll also be doing, is I'll be stopping from time to time to allow for people to ask some questions, because that, to me, I can easily miss things. There's nuances sometimes, and I very much want to support you in gaining value out of this webinar. At the same time, I want you to appreciate we only have a little less than an hour now, and so I may move us along because in the interest of time, and also recognizing the makeup of this webinar as well. So that's what we're going to focus on. So the first thing is the need. And when I was working on this, I said to myself, what's really the need? What is the need? What is it that's driving people to become coaches, to learn coaching skills, to be coached, to hire coaches? What's really behind this? And in all the time that I've spoken to students and I've worked with individuals and organizations, in the end, it's about change. And as you can see, that's what coaching's about. That's what the need is this tremendous pace of change that's going on, the constantly changing, ever-evolving technology, right? All the technology that's going on right now, all the changes to technology. And it's not like it was. It just isn't like it was a number of years ago. And everybody is having to move quicker, do more with less. As I said, what we as coaches should be doing when we're working with an individual, or it could be a group, is we want to be able to support someone in, and we should be doing it, in moving farther, faster, easier, quicker than they would have if they had not had a coach or had a coaching conversation. This is what we want to see happen. And so I want to just, I want to give a couple of examples of what I've seen. Competitiveness. In other words, organizations have recognized that they need to, that's another need. I can think of one very large organization that hired us, and what was going on was they had very, very, very tight profit margins. And certain little, and it was an industrial kind of it was a mining company actually. And what they were finding is that they were kind of losing out their price, they needed to improve their price points. And they recognized that they could possibly adjust that if they had coaching taking place with the people that were, listen to this, operating these massive, massive pieces of equipment. And so they brought in coaching because they knew that there were probably things that could be done to speed up the way the machine worked or the issues that we're having and so on and so forth. And it was really interesting because you'd think that they would know that. But people weren't being asked the kind of questions coaching does. There was not a safe environment that can be created when someone is being coached. And as a result, they did discover some things that were going on that they could adjust that made a big difference to what was going on in that organization and speeded up the process, the timing of getting the materials that were being mined to the market. So that's just a tiny example, and that's in a very what I call a more industrial kind of setting. So that's an example of some of the things that are going on in organizations. They're also, like I said, they're having to do more with less. There's constant change. The leaders and managers and the directors are so can be overwhelmed, as are the people that work with them. And the more that they're having those challenges, they're recognizing that people are hungering for different kinds of conversations, and conversations that are more solution focused and promote accountability. And that's another piece to this, is that this is what they're recognizing is going on out there. Also, the hierarchical approach is just not working anymore. And they're recognizing that we all need to tap into everybody's brilliance, ideas, thoughts, etc., etc. So that's what's going on with that. That is what I perceive, and what I hear more and more I perceive is the need that's driving the growth in coaching. And so we're going to get right into it now, and that is, do you even need a credential? Because that's what we're focusing on first, is the credentialing piece. And my take is that if you're going out there and you're wanting to be a coach, whether it is internal or external, what gives you the right to do that? What gives you the credibility? And how can you make it easier for people to work with you, whether it is internal or external? And having a credential that's recognized, and by the way, I want you to know that it is still an education process around this credentialing piece. There are so many different ones that people can take, etc., etc. And so there is still a very large credentialing education required so that the public can understand this. However, from my perspective, the largest credentialing organization and professional association of coaches out there that's the most known so far is the International Coach Federation. And I just want to slide back because I want to also say that having a credential will make your life easier if that's what you want to do. Because what is happening as well is that organizations who are putting out requests for proposals, or they're looking to hire coaches, they're actually putting this in as a requirement. In other words, the coach is credentialed. And in many cases, they're they're recognizing, as I mentioned just a moment ago, the International Coach Federation as the one that they're recognizing, and they're stipulating that that person or whoever they're hired has that credential. So it's just something that's going to make it easier for you as you move forward as a coach. And at the same time, what I've heard many people say, and including myself, when I first got my coaching credentials, it built my confidence because I had to go through some rigor to achieve it, and I had to qualify. And in fact, with any of the credentials I'm speaking about, they will, you will be renewing them. So for myself, my credential, every 3 years, I have to prove that I can still have that credential, and I have to go through a process to demonstrate that I've continued to take coaching education, that I've continued to develop myself, etc. And I think that's great. I personally want to see that happen. So that's, I have a real bias, and I have been very involved in the growth of the International Coach Federation, and worked with developing the competencies, the standards, what are these credentials, who gets them, how do we assess someone. And so that's I have no shares in the ICF. I just think that for now, in any case, that's the one that you want to get. So there's a couple of credentials that I'm going to speak to now from the ICF, and they are the Associate Certified Coach credential, and then they're also the Professional Certified Coach credential. There is a third one, the Master Certified Coach credential, which is actually what I've had that since 1999. But for the purposes of our conversation today, and based on what I'm seeing is the makeup of our webinar, it makes sense to focus on those two. And you can go to get your Master Certified Coach eventually as well, of course. It takes quite a considerable length of time. So we're gonna talk about this one first. So these are the requirements. And by the way, there is a website that I recommend you go to. It has an enormous number of, aside from ours, but it has an enormous number of resources on it, and it is the ICF, and it's I'll have it at the slide at the end, but it's the www.coachfederation.org. So this first credential is where you have to have 60 hours or more, thanks Sandra for putting the link there, of coach-specific training. And right now it's 100 hours of coaching, 75 of which are paid, meaning you're receiving compensation for your coaching in some way. And I want to just give a couple of nuances about that. And you will have worked with 8 clients. And then 10 hours of mentor coaching, and that will depend on which coach training you've taken, as well as you will need to take a coach knowledge assessment questionnaire. And there's going to be some changes coming shortly, which you can see on the slide, that they're going to be changing it effective October 1, that the hours that you submit will be from the start of your coach-specific training. And what that is really speaking to is that some people were applying, which was fine, and they were putting in all kinds of coaching that they had done before they actually took any training. And that was allowed. However, they want to now do it from the time you start your coach-specific training. And as you can see, at this particular level, you've got to have 25 hours within the previous 18 months once you apply. And by the way, this particular credential, it's all online, and you can go to the website and you can literally look at all the questions that they're going to ask, all the things that you're going to have to provide, etc., etc. And there are if you've taken, and I won't go into too much detail about this, but there's ACTP level programs, there's ACSTH level programs, which all ours are, and then there's the portfolio route, which is where you have to provide much more robust documentation, because those programs, whatever they were, have not been vetted by the ICF. So for example, in my case, we have to go through a rigorous process to be approved that we are doing all the right things. So those are the requirements for the ACC level. I'm just going to stop for a second, and now I'm going to move to the next level, which is, please move forward, there we go. And this is the PCC level, and that's another level up. And as you can see, there's more hours required of coach-specific training, as well as more hours required of coaching. And that can take a while. As you can see, 750 hours of coaching. It's going to be going down to 500 hours shortly. And again, everybody can read the slides. It's all on the website as well, and they even have little little videos that you can watch about it as well, and I encourage that to support you in understanding and learning more. Again, 10 hours of mentor coaching, the coach knowledge assessment, and for PCC level, it's what we call a performance evaluation, and that means you have to submit audios of your actual coaching that you've done, and then they will listen to those, and they will have to, you will have to manage to demonstrate that you understand what coaching is, and you've demonstrated the coaching competencies as identified by the ICF, and those competencies are all listed on the ICF website as well. So, and what I'm going to also say to you is there's a lot more information than this on the website, and there's all kinds of nuances, but this will give you a reasonable idea of what you're going to be required to do if you decide to go for credentialing. Some of you may not. Some of you may choose to incorporate this into your leadership and the work you do in an organization. And you may decide, this is great, and this is what works for me. And some of you may decide that, no, I want to pursue that certification. My suggestion to you with any coach-specific training that you take, the easier way is if it's already been approved, either ACTP or ACSTH approved. Then you don't have to provide this robust documentation. You simply provide the certificate or certificates that you've received from that organization. All right, so I'm going to just move. Is anybody at this point, and I'm just checking the chat, anybody got any questions? And I'm just going to stop for a few moments and let people, if they have a question, type it into the chat area. And of course, Sandra can promote you to a panelist so you can actually speak. Excuse me. Well, it looks like maybe we can move on. And by the way, if we see questions later, we can also we'll have another opportunity for questions towards the end of the webinar as well. So, okay, so we're going to move on. First thing I want to mention is basically what is it that clients are looking for? Because this is what, when we get into our strategies, this is what you're going to need to speak to. There has to be, they want results. There has to be a gap between where they are and where they want to be. In other words, what is it that's going to tell them that coaching was worthwhile? Because if they're going to pay you, or you're going to be within an organization used as a coach, there has to be value. Also, what is your background? Initially, when I got started in coaching, and I've seen this over and over and over again, is normally clients or coachees in an organization want what you have. That's usually what they're going to be attracted to, whether it's lots of coaching experience, a coaching credential, as I say, education, somebody's referred you. I mean, that's gold when someone refers you to that. They want your energy, they like your energy, they feel when they're speaking with you that they're mobilized, they're excited, they want to move forward. They have that environment that creates that energy for them, and you've got that for them. So how are you going to make it? What are going to be your strategies when you as you grow as a coach? What's your smart way? I always think of strategies is what is your smart way of getting there with the least amount of effort or cost? What is the smart way to do this? And so I've identified we've already talked about the education strategy, because in fact, with most of you, many of you have already got some training. So you're already in process or in progress, or you've completed that part or a portion of that part. You're already getting coaching education. So great. So now, what are some of the other ones that are going to be helpful for you as you embark or continue to grow as a coach? So I've got a little bit of a visual here. Like I said, you've invested in education. Many of you are already doing that. So what else? What are the other strategies that are going to have you be successful? So for example, you can see we're talking about that, leveraging your strengths, giving your side. I've got them all identified here. And this just looks and will expand who you work with, how you work with people, the people that will be attracted to you. These are the ones that I feel, or I've synthesized in my way, that are going to support you in succeeding. And I want you to think about as we're going through this, and afterwards, I really would like to assign some work for you, and that is, what would be absolutely ideal for you? What will your ideal coachee or client be? Who would you just love to work with? And how will you know? What is going to tell you that you are successful? And many people will say, well, I'm being paid to do this, whether it's internal or external. Great. What else? What else is going to, because you're going to be spending a lot of time at this. You're going to be investing more time to educate if you get your credential, et cetera, et cetera. What is going to tell you that you're going to be successful at this? Really extremely important. So let's get into it. So the first one is, and this is so important, is what are your strengths? What is it that you have? And find that out if you're not sure, but literally document it, find out. So when I first got into coaching, and I've asked many people to do this as well, is what are you good? What are your strengths? What have you been through? And in fact, in coaching, what I love about coaching is that, certainly in my case, and I've heard this from others, it has allowed me to leverage every single solitary thing that has ever happened to me in my entire life, good, bad, or indifferent. It has really helped me, because when I'm working with people, I can look to that. But what are the key ones? What are the key strengths that you bring to this? Maybe you're very, very good at dealing with conflict. You've had excellent work in that area. What are some accomplishments that you've had in your career or in your life? What have you? Another one is some people have been they've done extremely well in athletics, so they're leveraging that they have achieved certain levels of I've had literally Olympic medalists come to coaching, to this kind of coaching, and they're able to leverage that. Think about what is something that you right away is coming to your mind that you can leverage. And because that's what's going to make it fun for you and bring that richness to your coaching. So in my case, for example, when I came to coaching, I'd had a business background and I had worked in sales management in the corporate environment, and I'd also worked in real estate and real estate development. I had a mix. I had been an entrepreneur as well as worked in the corporate environment. So what I did is I looked to that and I went, all right, so that sort of makes sense that I may start there. In other words, where are you going to start, or where are you starting? And so for some of you internal in an organization, you're starting with, and I'm thinking of an example, in healthcare. We've done a lot of work in healthcare, and so a number of people have come up clinically in healthcare. Then they've learned, they've developed their coaching abilities, and so who are they working with? Who is likely to be the kind of people that they're going to work with right away? It's going to be people in healthcare, isn't it? And they're going to market to that, whether it's internal or external. They're going to let those people know that that's what you're doing. So what is it that, what are you going to, what strengths are you going to focus on initially? Because that's, like I said, they're going to want what you have. It's going to be very important. Here's one. And I'm kind of guessing we may have people in here who want this now. Is anybody, I don't know if I can see your heads, but anybody like that? They want it now. They want to have it happening right now. And I'm going to tell you this. Give yourself time. I wanted it right away. I wanted to get go. I was actually, to be honest with you, what I was doing at that time, I was kind of sick of it, and I wanted something new. However, I had a family to support, so I had to earn a living, and so this was a tricky one because I really wanted to get into it, but at the same time, I had to earn a living. And what I say to some people is, don't quit your day job. Give yourself time to not only learn how to coach, but also to work with people. It is going to take time. Some programs that you take, coaching education programs for those that who will be adding to what you've already done, it's probably at least going to take you, if you're in some programs, a few hours a week. You're going to have to go somewhere. If you're going to go on site somewhere, you're going to have to spend a fair bit of time learning this. So just remember that. And some programs even require much more. They may require 20 to 30 hours a week of work as you're going through that. So you're going to need to know that that is going to be the case. And remember what I mentioned earlier with the credentialing piece, the hours that you're going to need, the 100 hours of coach-specific, coaching of people. So that's going to take you some time. The mentor-coach work that you're going to do, that's going to take some time. But really, the practice and exercising your coaching, what I call your coaching chops, is going to take time. And as you develop your confidence, it will make it easier for you to engage with people, to have them hire you as a coach. The more confident you are, the easier it's going to be. So there you go. Give yourself time. The next one is capitalize on what you're doing right now. I say this to a lot of people. What can you do right now in the job that you have that you can capitalize on to support you as you develop coaching, as you develop as a coach? Quite often, I'll have various people who are taking our programs, they're leaders, they're managers, they're directors, etc. in an organization. And what I challenge them to do is, what is the opportunity that you could seize on within that organization right now that could start to build up your credibility as a coach? So, for example, you could possibly start coaching some of your colleagues, and document what is happening as a result of that. The more that you have a story to tell of what you've done in coaching, the easier it's going to be for other people to hire you, as well as you're going to create these advocates for your coaching. So what can you look on? What can you seize upon in your organization right now where you're working that you could start to quantify this? Perhaps it's defining some key metrics. Maybe it's in your department or your division where you could define, say, 5 key metrics that you're going to measure amongst the people that you are coaching, and start at the beginning, and then say 3 months in, maybe even 6 months in, you measure it again. There's your story. In that period of time, here's what coaching did in this particular area. What other things could you potentially capitalize on right now with the work you're doing? So in my case, here's what I did. I was, at the time I was going through the coach training, I was in a leadership position in real estate. And so what I did is I started to use those skills on the real estate, the salespeople that I was leading a sales team. So I started to use those coaching skills with those salespeople, and I started to measure what was happening as a result, and we identified what was going to tell them it was successful. And that was a story that I was able to tell and leverage to when I did actually leave that position. I was able to work with a number of people in real estate who hired me because I had a record of success at supporting, in that particular case, their increase in sales. So, but please, the critical thing here is document it. Tell your story, write it down. I know it's a pain sometimes because you're so busy, but believe me, that is absolutely critical. Here's another one. Another critical strategy is you cannot be a secret. You have to let people know what you're doing. How do you do that? How are you going to not be a secret? Within the organization, how are you going to inform people that you are coaching? What are you going to tell them? What are you going to say? All of those people are going to become advocates for you the more that they're aware of what you're doing. And at the same time, it will strengthen you in terms, it'll put you on the hot seat for right in that moment talking about what you do as a coach. What is a coach? You're going to be answering those questions, and here's another piece to it. In my opinion, it can force you, as you're doing that, to literally coach in the moment. When you're having a conversation in the hallway with somebody about what you're doing, when you're in a meeting perhaps, use all of those opportunities to leverage your coaching abilities, your coaching skills. And that's if you're internal in an organization. Externally, where are you going to go to meet potential people who are going to hire you? Where is that going to be? Networking events can be. I know for myself, I had more chicken meals, chicken lunches, chicken dinners than I care to remember, because I could not be a secret. I had to get known. And a thing that I did, because I was uncomfortable with promoting myself. It was just not my natural way of being. So my attitude whenever I met someone is, what can I bring of value to those people? What can I bring of value? So what I did, instead of as the traditional way as you pass out your business card perhaps, no, I had a tip sheet on whatever was going on at the time. What are 10 things that are going to support a leader in being successful? And I would hand that out so that was a help. As well, I offered to speak at various sales meetings, in my case, because I had that background. But I had to get known, so you have to be willing to not be a secret. Social media may be a great spot for you. Writing blogs, writing articles, getting published, that may be a great way for you, a strategy. Whether it's internal or external, you can do it both in both situations. Okay, so what's the next one? Experiment. Be willing to experiment and get a coach. Beware of a coach who's never been coached. In other words, you're going to use a coach to support you in growing as a coach, in becoming a successful coach, whether it's internal or external. But here's the other piece. You need to be willing to experiment and take some risks. So, scare yourself a bit. Offer to coach somebody that maybe you're just a little bit nervous about, possibly. Get out there and exercise those chops. And I'll just throw something out about that, because that's easy for me to say. Scare myself, take a risk. Oh my gosh, I don't want to be wrong. But here's how you do it. When you're communicating with that person or individual, share with them that you are developing as a coach, that you are growing as a coach, and one of the things that you need to do is get practice. So ask them if they'd be willing to work with you, and would it be okay if you possibly made some mistakes in your coaching. Set yourself up to make it easier for you at the beginning to do that. So be willing to experiment, try the skills on, practice, but take those risks. So for example, I would, if I was wanting to challenge, because again, remember what I said earlier, that people will work with a coach because they have a gap between where they are and where they want to be. If I'm not challenging them, if they're not moving, as I said, farther, faster, easier, quicker, better than they would have if they had not worked with a coach, then that's not a value. So if I'm not maybe asking them some tough questions, or I'm not challenging them in some way, it's just going to be nice, what I call safe coaching, and thank you so much, but it really didn't do anything. You gotta take those risks. And quite often what I would say is, don't know if I've got this right, don't know if this might work, but I'd like to ask a question of you. What is it going to take for this to not be an issue anymore in your work or your life, or whatever the question was? But ask that challenging question. Take them. Your job is to be an advocate for their brilliance. You need to see that they are capable of that. But by you asking those kinds of questions, by you taking those risks, by you challenging them, is saying to them, I believe it's possible for you. I believe you're capable of doing this and beyond. They may not think that at the time, but by you asking that, it's saying, and making a request of them, asking them to do something, it's saying that you actually believe it's possible. And the no-brainer in my mind is getting a coach, making sure that you're working with a coach. So that's a really important strategy. Here's another one. And I've already talked about it, I've already mentioned it, but here's the piece: practice. Yes, get good training. Yes, you have to do that. That's critical. And be focused on achieving a credential if you're going to be hanging out your shingle out there. Practice. And here's a tip for you about this that helped me a lot. And I called it the what I call the pro bono coaching strategy. And that is, I felt uncomfortable when I was learning, as I was going through this, to charge people money, at least at the very beginning, or at least charge them very much. We want you to do that or be paid for it within an organization. In other words, that an organization will say, yes, part of what you do is coaching. So we want that. We want to be paid and valued for it. And at the beginning, what worked, and I encourage people to do this because it got me to get off the pot, so to speak. I had to go out and do it, and I was paralyzed in actually literally developing that practice. So I offered to coach 5 people pro bono for free for 2 months. And I literally identified what that was going to look like. In other words, how many times was I going to coach them? How long was it going to be? And what I also said, and this is, I asked them 3 different things. One, if they were pleased with what I did, that they would be an advocate for my service. In other words, I could use their name as references. Number 2, that if they were pleased with what I did at the end of that period and they wanted to continue, that they could continue with me and they were aware of what I would charge at that point. And then number 3, and it's just left my brain for half a second, yes, I know, that if they were pleased with how I worked with them, that they would become a referral. In other words, they would refer people to me. And that was worth, I will tell you, of the 5 people, only 1 continued on. But they all became advocates for my service, and they all became referrals. And it was worth its weight in gold when I submitted an article on coaching to a publication. It was well, it was the Vancouver Board of Trade, but it was like a big chamber of commerce. And it was about coaching and about what I had seen and results that people were achieving, etc. And what was so great about that is those people were interviewed for that article by a writer. And I didn't submit the article, I was interviewed for it. I forgot that part. I was interviewed for it. And that writer was able to talk to those people, and they were all advocates for that, for my service. And the very day it came out, the first article that came out, I got contacted by someone who hired me. So set yourself up for success in that way. It's so valuable. So I've shared 6, well, actually 7 basic strategies, and I see that I have a question. So I'm going to stop now, and I'm going to move to questions. And I see, thank you, from Diane Templeton, I think it is. Yes, the coaching log. Thank you so much for asking that question. Here's the piece. You need to document it. I recommend something like an Excel spreadsheet. Who is it you're coaching? What is their contact information? How many times for how long did you coach? In other words, was it 6 months, and it was made up of, I'm just throwing this out, 10 coaching meetings, an hour of duration? Really, really important. And I'm just reading the rest of your questions, so you can use that. And then, and I'll ask the next one after that. Good question too. Yeah, so the same requirement, document those hours, your coaching hours. And you need to document. Yeah, the more detail the better, because when an assessor is looking at it, you want to make it as easy as possible for them to go through it. So rigor, in my recommendation, more is the best choice. In other words, dates, times, who you coached, and put that in, and with their contact information, including their phone number. Just make it easy for them. Now let me just see, I want to just look. The PCC. Yeah, well, whether waiting to go to PCC, no, I say go get your ACC. Get your ACC. Just get it, because then you've already documented certain components, and you won't be going through that part again. You'll be adding to it, and it gets you in the flow of that. If it's going to take quite 750 hours, or even if it's 500, is going to take time to achieve that. So go for it, just get it. And then you've got that, and believe me, it does add to the people's levels of confidence. When you're internal, Carol asked this. Hi, Carol. Bye. Hi, Diane. I recognize some people here. When you're internal, how can you get paid to achieve the ICF competency? Okay. Internally, what you want is in your job description or your direct report, whoever you report to be able to say that as part of what you do, you are coaching. In other words, that's how because then you're paid. You see, part of your salary includes your coaching. So you want to be able to have that specified. Have your direct, the person you report to, be willing to provide a letter saying that, or be willing to be contacted to say that that is part of your position. So that is very, very, very important. Okay, oh my goodness, so many things are coming up here. Let's see. Can you provide some metrics one can use to support return on investment? Oh boy, that's a great question. That is a great question, and I can't provide that to you because it has to be unique to that particular what are the key metrics that they are defining. Look at what is that organization or individual who you're working with, what is it that's going to tell them that this was successful, because that's what you want to develop. So there are not they're not cookie cutter, but certainly a common one is retention. I've seen employee engagement, their engagement scores, the completion of projects. I'm just using those, and there's more. But anyway, I'm going to move beyond that right now. But and you'll see there is an offer that you can speak to me to after this webinar. I'm happy to schedule time with any of you. I absolutely love doing that. The next one is, in order to reach 120, are there full courses that cover main topic reach? Yes, there are full courses that will provide you with 125 hours. And you'll look for what are called accredited coach training programs, ACTP programs. They're quite rigorous, they're quite involved. It may be they're vary in pricing, but they can be fairly time consuming and pricey, and they're fabulous as well. So, and that may be the route for you. Or you may choose to go at it over time, because remember, initially you can get 60 hours and you can build on those 60 hours as you're moving through, getting your experience, developing as a coach, etc. So there's different ways. Happy to, also, if I was to quit my current job, yes, well, the ICF website has a number of programs that you can go on and you can find out which ones they have. There's some that will be face-to-face and you can really move through it. However, the practice piece is the piece that's going to take time, because you can't move through that in a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is. And it's very, very it's very rigorous. So, but that is where I would direct you to the ICF website and look for the ATP programs. All right, what level of credential? Very good. It varies. Some will say an ICF credential. That's how they will specify. Some may get more specific, and they may say an ACC or a PCC. We've seen many, many times what we see is that they have an ICF credential. So that helps you. Then as they're interviewing and as you're going through that process, part of what you're going to also be documenting or telling them is what's your experience? Who have you worked with? Most organizations will want to hear your past experience. Arlie has her hand up. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm trying to see where the hat, could you allow Arlie to, I'm just looking for Arlie here. Hang on, where is she? Arlie. Hi, Arlie. You have to, if you're going to ask the question, you have to take yourself off mute to do that. Otherwise, you can put it in the chat box. I can't see any other. Oh, there's so many. There's so many good questions here. Let's see. haven't done any. Oh, I think that's what I just answered. Okay. What level of credential? Oh, I already asked that. Oh, I've answered the questions. All right. So great. Those are fabulous questions. And I'm going to just move along here. There's a lot to cover in a short space of time, but I want you to know this. These are just 3 key resources for you that there's an enormous amount of information on any of these websites. The other one that I want you to know is I just love speaking to people who are developing their coaching and getting credentials and so on. You can certainly meet with me to discuss further. I'm happy to do that. You can contact Sandra, and Sandra's been very kindly managing our admin manager. Sandra has been very kindly handling some of this during the webinar today. And so please reach out to her and she will schedule some time with me. We have a number of coaching programs that are coming up this fall. Please have a look. All of ours are ACSTH approved, so you can go through that process. And if you were to take all of ours, you would have way more than enough of the 60 hours for the ACC level. We are going to have another webinar in August that is going to focus on literally explaining what our programs are and our fast track to ICF certification via our programs. And we're also going to be sending out a document after this webinar within the next day or so called Making It as a Coach. And I have in there, I think it is 87 different ideas, strategies, ways to approach this to support you in becoming successful. And what I want you to know is a number of people who go into coaching, and this is I think really important for people to understand, is that some people are going into this and they're adding it to their toolkit. In other words, they may be already external consultants, for example, and what's happening is organizations are saying, well, we want you to have a coaching credential as well. And so they're coming and getting those, or they're deciding they want to add this to the offerings that they have. Internally, what we're seeing is a number of people are saying, I want to learn coaching because this is going to add to my resume. It's going to be adding to my value in the organization. And for some, they may not need to, or they may not choose to go and get their credential, but they are going to add to their value within the organization. So there we go. And so I'm amazed. I have 2 minutes left. And so does anybody else have a question that I can answer for you, oh, actually, I just remembered something. I want to, if I can find it, I want to launch my poll. It would be wonderful for you to answer these questions. So I'm just going to launch this second poll. And if you answer those, we won't know who's answering them, so it's all confidential, but it would be enormously helpful for me and for Coaching Out of the Box as we continue to do these monthly webinars, because we really want to you're taking an hour out of your day, and we want this to be of value to you. Good. Good. That's terrific. And I'm going to publish it in a second because this is very, very helpful to see where this is. Coaching demos, I see that. I want to do those. So there's people who want those. I want to have those on our webinars. Absolutely. Yeah. Individual, I see that, right. And the ways that you're finding out about this webinar are also very very helpful. Oh, great. Nice to see you, Jessica, as well. Nice to see you. Great. Terrific. All right. So, okay, well, everybody, I'm going to end the poll. Most people have answered it, and I just really, and I'll share it so you can see what it said. And I just really, again, want to thank everybody for attending, and best happy coaching and best wishes in your coaching. All right. Bye-bye. And thanks, Sandra, for all your help. So we'll just